Today we're talking about a huge issue that so many of us face, especially when we get older. I am talking about kitchen clutter. And the reason why I know the kitchen clutter is such a huge issue for so many of us, I was looking on Google Trends, and worldwide, there are so many searches going crazy right now for how to reduce kitchen clutter. But this video isn't about just tidying up your kitchen, it's about the mistakes that you might be making that are preventing you from having the functional, beautiful kitchen that you deserve. So the older we get, of course, the more time we have to accumulate things. And the longer that we have those things, the more this feeling comes out towards those things. And that feeling, nostalgia. It's a really powerful emotion, and this leads me to my first point. How many of you remember baking or cooking with your mom, maybe your dad, your grandparents? And I bet you've inherited some of their dishes or their bakeware. I have so much stuff from my parents and from my grandparents, and a lot of it I still use, especially if it's still functional. But I'm going to tell you about this yellow bundt pan that I had. Now, this pan was given to me by my grandmother, and she used to bake cakes in it, and I really loved it, but it was Teflon and it was scratched. Once you scratch the surface of Teflon, you can no longer use it because you're going to be leaching the chemicals that are in Teflon into your baked goods. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but I couldn't let go of this pan. I was just hanging on to it. So here I am, not using the pan. I'm hanging on to it for years. Every time I open my cupboard to start baking, things are falling out. The pan is always falling out on me, and I keep thinking in my head, oh, I should really do something about this, but I can't get rid of it. And the reason is nostalgia. I know it's a very powerful emotion, but what I'm going to say is if you're hanging on to things and you don't use them, or you're not displaying them and you're not loving them, they're just not adding anything to your kitchen. They're just really what they're doing is causing clutter. What happens? A lot of older people, they have a lot of dishes and glassware and things that gets passed down to them. They're hanging on to it. They're not really using it. They're just accumulating it. I'm not telling you to get rid of everything, but what I'm saying is evaluate the things that you have, and are you actually using them? Are they adding value to your life? If they're not, think about, is there someone else in your family? Maybe you can pass them down to, if you've got a niece or a nephew who are maybe just starting out, maybe you have other family members who might want it. Maybe you've got kids who are growing up and leaving the home. By the way, I know it's strange that I'm sitting in my attic and filming a kitchen clutter video. Ideally, I would be in my kitchen. Last night, our sprayer hose started leaking underneath the kitchen sink, so our kitchen is in a bit of a shambles right now. It's not fit for filming, so that's why we're up here. The next mistake, and if you were doing this one, I get it. I've done it as well, but it is storing non-kitchen items in your kitchen. I'm talking about things like mail, paper mail, medicine, tools. This used to be very common. I think back in the day, spaces were a lot smaller, and so you needed to really expand the use of every room, and each room had to be multifunctional or multi-use. So it wasn't just a kitchen, it was also your tool bench. But what happens when you do this is you end up not having the space for the things that actually belong in your kitchen. And when you don't have the space for the things that belong, then that clutter kind of spills out. It spills out of the cabinets, it spills out of the storage areas, it spills onto the counter, onto the floor. So try to think about, what do you have in your kitchen that really doesn't belong there? But I'm just going to give you a caveat because I am all about functionality over anything. If you've watched my videos, you know I talk about this all of the time, but just some things that I'll share. I like to take vitamins, so I do store those in the kitchen. The reason why is I take them with food, and then I also take them with water. Everything kind of is right there, so it makes sense to store them in the kitchen. One of my subscribers, he brushes his teeth in the kitchen, so yes, it makes sense for him to store his toothbrush and toothpaste in the kitchen. But things like medication, doesn't need to be in the kitchen. Mail definitely does not need to be in the kitchen. I stored my mail in my kitchen for so many years. I had a basket piled high with papers. It was simply causing clutter on my counter. Don't ask me why I felt I needed to store it in the kitchen and why I didn't just move it out of there. So think about the things in your kitchen that maybe don't belong there and you can move out. I'm actually even going to go so far as to say, maybe think about things in your kitchen that you only use infrequently. So maybe they're actually kitchen items, but you only use them once a year. You've heard me talk about this. If you've got a roasting pan, Christmas dishes, Halloween cookie cutters, just throwing these ideas out there. These are things that you could store elsewhere. I kind of think of the kitchen in two different ways. Number one, it's the heart of the house. So everyone gathers there, everyone uses it. In fact, people use it daily, but oftentimes multiple times a day. It's definitely one of the most challenging areas in a home to keep clean. But then number two, it is a very valuable piece of real estate in your home. You can store so many things in your kitchen. So you just want to make sure that you're maximizing your space in your kitchen and not storing things that would really benefit from being elsewhere. If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below. It's free. One of the things that I love so much about older generations is we were taught to not be so wasteful. I think the reason kind of stems from maybe an upbringing, maybe post-war upbringing, maybe even some people were raised in communism. My husband is Bulgarian, so he was raised in communism, and he and I share very similar feelings on waste. In fact, he's actually, in some instances, even more careful than I am, which I really admire. But one mistake you might be doing in order to avoid waste is you may be hanging on to plastic stuff. I'm talking about old butter containers. I'm talking about those tubs that the cookies come in. I understand the thinking here. My mother-in-law, she saves all kinds of plastic things. Anything that she buys, if it comes in a little piece of plastic packaging that she thinks might be useful, she will hang on to it. What happens though is when you start saving these things and you're not actually using them, again, it just turns into clutter. And if you've got cabinets full of this plastic stuff, you just don't want to hang on to that if you're not using it and if you don't need it. Another thing I will say, plastic isn't very good for you. So if you're having these flimsy plastic containers and you're putting food in it or eating out of it, that plastic could be leaching chemicals into your food. So we don't want to do that. So my advice here isn't to stop doing this altogether. It's to stop doing this with plastic containers. I think saving jars and containers is great. If you looked at my cabinet, I have so many jelly jars that I've saved. I have so many pasta sauce jars that I've saved. These are sturdy, useful items, I find. I also find that when I'm at the grocery store, I really try to limit even bringing these plastic items into the house in the first place. I was just at Wegmans with my daughter. She wanted to get these sprinkle cookies at the bakery, and they had two choices of containers. They could either give you a plastic tub that you could put the cookies in, or they had a cardboard box. She wanted the tub, and we kind of got into it at the store, and I had to explain to her, listen, you're going to put these cookies in this hard plastic tub that then you're just going to recycle it, and who knows if it's actually getting recycled, rather than this cardboard box that's going to deteriorate and break down over time. That's so much less wasteful. She finally agreed. We ended up getting the cardboard box. All was well. But it's those kinds of things that I like to think about when I'm at the store, and I think, how can I reduce waste and not bring so much plastic into the home? So moving on, and this one is keeping multiple sets of the same items. I bet you're going to know what I'm talking about when I give some examples here. Measuring spoons. Why do we have so many measuring spoons? I find that I will buy a set of measuring spoons, then I will lose one, maybe two, and I'll need to buy another set, and then another set, and it's just this cycle, and before you know it, I have 12 measuring spoons randomly all over, and I just never get rid of them. This also happens with spoons, serving spoons, knives, different kinds of utensils. I would consider freeing up some space in your kitchen, evaluating what you have. What are the duplicates of things or sets of things that you have that you may not need, and consider donating them. Unless someone's a minimalist, there's another thing that I see in a lot of kitchens, and I'm just going to call it over displaying your items. A lot of people will have their counters and have their shelves, even the tops of their counters, and they will just display every dish, every antique plate, every canister that they have, and they will put everything on display. I used to do this as well. I thought that if I had it, I needed to display it. Honestly though, all this did was make my kitchen counter look super cluttered. And when I used to tell you, when I would try to clean my counters, I would spend so much of my time moving the items off the counter just so I could get to the counter to clean it, and then so much more time to put it back. That's how much stuff I had on the counter. That's how many things I had on display. And the worst part is when you do display these things, they get so dusty. So you not only have to clean the counter, you have to individually clean each thing you're displaying. I just remember I was so exhausted from cleaning my counter. That was like the only thing I could get done that day. So my advice is, if you have a lot of things that you want to display, I would consider rotating them. Put some out, put some away, and then rotate them. Rotate them through the years, the seasons, whatever suits you, but try not to have so many items on display just because you own them. The next mistake is a big one. It is the over accumulation of cleaning products, and I get it. The cleaning marketing is very strong. We have been led to believe that we need a cleaner for tile. We need a cleaner for stainless steel. We need a special cleaner for granite. We need a special cleaner for marble. I don't think you do. I do find that in certain cases this could be useful, but what I think happens is people hear this and see this and they buy it. And then before you know it, they have 10 specialty cleaners. And what are they using to clean their home? The one bottle of multi-purpose spray. It's okay, we've all fallen prey to this, but my advice here is to ditch all of these cleaners. Either give them away, you could go on Trash Nothing or Buy Nothing. Those groups are always looking for different things. So either ditch them that way or maybe just use them up and don't rebuy them. Because when you have so many cleaners and you're not using them, they're just cluttering up under your sink. And remember how I mentioned the leak that we had on our kitchen sink? I had to take everything out from under my sink, and I was thinking back to the days where my underneath of that sink was filled with products. I probably had 25 products stored under that sink, and I would have been pretty unhappy having to take all of those out. This time it wasn't as difficult. I mean, still annoying, but not nearly as difficult. So just think about how you can condense your cleaning products. I personally make my own, a little bit of water, some dish soap. I also go for natural cleaners. Blue Land is great. I have a cleaner from them as well. I do have a code if you ever want to try them out. This next one is holding on to appliances that you never use. I'm a huge fan of old appliances, let me tell you. I find that they were just made so much better. They are sturdier. I have a bread machine that's 25, 30 years old. I have this immersion hand blender that my grandmother had given to me. I know that was from the early 90s. And I use that blender almost every week. But if you're not using it, then guess what? Again, you're just hanging onto these appliances and they're just creating clutter. And I think appliances are a lot like cars. If you don't use them and start them, they're gonna die. So think about if you've got any old appliances in your kitchen and they still work and you're not using them, maybe think about who you can give them to, who you can donate them to. That's why my grandmother gave me the immersion blender. She wasn't using it anymore, and I'm getting a ton of use out of it. When you do this, you just end up freeing up a lot of space in your kitchen. And the bottom line is, kitchens look cluttered simply because there is too much stuff in the space that you have allocated for it. And as we get older, we end up accumulating more. And as time goes on, we don't even notice how much stuff we have. Sometimes we become clutter blind to the amount of things we have, and we just don't actually even see it. And we don't even notice that we're not using it. Okay guys, well I hope this video helped if you are looking to tackle some of your kitchen clutter. If you want to keep the decluttering going, as always, I'm gonna link a decluttering playlist and I'll see you over there. Bye-bye.